Today I'm doing something a little different. I got my 21 Subaru Forester. It has a Ironman 2-inch lift on it, and today what I'm doing is I'm putting a set of body armor rock sliders on it. And as of right now, I'm replacing the bolts on the bottom of the A-arm mount with this piece right here and longer bolts. That's where the part of this rock slider is going to mount to. I got to finish pulling these bolts out, and a 3/4 inch impact gun helps a ton doing this, getting these bolts out. It will loosen up a little bit back here in this corner when you loosen those bolts, but that's okay. I just put one bolt in there just to make sure it didn't shift while I take this other one out. It is really loose, so I could probably almost pull it out by hand, but I'm just going to pull it out with it and come back. Ta-da! Simple as that. So now I'm going to go get the other bolt for this and finish bolting that on. Okay, so another important thing to remember is to put the lock washer on the bolt before the regular washer. The lock washer will help keep this tight, and you don't have to worry about loosening up while you're out there on the trail or just driving around. I always start them hand tight. That way I know I'm not cross-threading them before I put the impact gun on there. Now this side I got to take back off because I forgot to put the lock washer on. Lock washer on. Throw it back in by hand. And then take your impact gun and drive her back home. Oh, and of course, it ain't the same size bolt. How would you figure that, right? Let's see. But it just happened to have the right size. It's a 22 millimeter. Went from a 3/4 to a 22 millimeter. And ta-da! Now to the next step. Alright, so next I am going to put the bracket on the back. I also have a Ironman suspension lift kit on here, so that is going to make this a little different. This goes on here with no spacer. It's basically just going to bolt just like that underneath there. So I'm going to pull these two bolts out, replace them with these two longer bolts, and this is going to set right there just like so. You could take this splash guard off, but I'm just going to leave it on. It's got enough pliability to actually push it in while I take the impact gun to it and pull those bolts loose. It's been working really well. One bolt out. Second bolt out. Wiggle, wiggle. There we go. Now I'll put the plate on. And it looks like I might have to cut this little plastic guard a little bit to get this to go on there. So yeah, I'm going to have to cut this a little bit right here, I think. Alright, so as you can see, I basically just notched out a little V in there. Like so. I just took a razor blade and just cut it. It's pretty soft plastic. And then I cut a little bitty notch off the top right there just to allow this bracket to slide in there like so. It's still a little snug, but it gets in there. Always remember, make sure your lock washers are on there. Alright, so I got my bolts started back in there. Like I said, I like to start them with a wrench or by hand just to make sure they're threaded straight. Take my impact gun. So now I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit. I'm not really following the instructions anymore because I ran into some issues where the mounting brackets go on the bottom of the car where you have to drill holes. So I'm going to mount the rock slider to the front and back bracket, and then that way I'll be able to have an idea of where I have to mount the center holes. So you have to bear with me. This isn't the most ideal way to do this, but when you're doing it by yourself, you know, sometimes you just gotta wing it. Oh, I don't mean to wing that set. So we're just gonna see what happens if I do it this way. I'm not going to tighten these nuts and bolts down. I'm just going to put them in here and kind of just center everything up and see where it goes. I'm going to put one bolt in here, just kind of hold it in place, and then I'm going to go up the front and I'm going to do the same thing. See what happens here. Okay. This thing's not that light, so bear with me. So, on camera, man. Alright, put that there. Put that down there just to hold it in place. Now, put that down there. Now I can have an idea of where these brackets have to mount on here. That's the issue I'm running into. I don't know where they're going to mount, because truthfully, they're not mounting up the hole where they say they're going to be. So, I'm just going to take this and take these brackets. Find these brackets. Alright, so, we're going to do the instructions. You have to remove this whole lower plastic skid plate. More of a pressure than anything. Just a piece of plastic. Do a bunch of little screws like this throughout the piece of plastic. You just pull those with those two levers, turn them 2 or 3 times, they'll pop out like that. And then you take this nice tool right here and use it underneath here. And then just pop them like so. And don't lose them, just back. Okay. Back to under the car. So, here's what I did. This whole cover comes off the bottom because you have to access these 3 holes right here. And what you have to do with these 3 holes, this gets kind of confusing. This threaded insert has to go into these 3 holes. So you have to take a 3/8 drill bit and ream out these holes. Well, don't ream them out, just drill them out to a 3/8 hole. Don't go all the way through, just barely get this one done. Alright, so now that hole's drilled, so this insert will basically go, supposed to go in that hole. Apparently not quite big enough. You want it to be snug, but okay. Apparently my drill bit isn't exactly 3/8. So I found a 1/2-inch socket to go into my impact gun, where this tool actually goes into that. This tool will actually crush this flange on the back here so it doesn't allow this to spin. Alright. So now we'll get, still kind of snug. I might need the hammer just to tap it in there. Alright. Little mallet, plastic mallet head. Tap it in there nice and tight. I'm going to take my impact gun with a 13mm wrench. Put the 13mm wrench on the back side of this nut. I like to use the side of the frame there, that way it doesn't allow it to spin. Pull that down tight. Back it back off. Screw this out. Now that threaded flange is stuck inside of there. You basically do that to all 3 of these holes. And then you take a 5/16 drill bit, take this little bracket that it comes with, it'll mount just like so. Take your bolt, tighten it in there, hand tight. Now what I'll do is I'll take a Sharpie and I'll put a little mark on the bottom of this, because you have to drill a hole through this flange here, so you can put a nut and a bolt there also. Alright, so I got all 3 of the plugs in. I got the one done. I got to do the other 2, but I'm just showing you the progress so far. I'm going to mount these brackets like this up under here, and then put the crossbar back on, or put the slider back on to see how it sets up. Each one of these pieces does say it's got a PC on 3 of them and a DC on 3. And of course that means passenger side or driver side. So that's just a little tip that'll help you also. I got all the brackets on, holes drilled, bolts all tight. They're all 10mm. Just hit them with an impact wrench, put them in there all the way down. So now what I'm going to do, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to, is I'm going to put back on this plastic cover that goes right here. It goes all along this side right here. Technically you probably don't have to put it back on, but I'm going to put it back on anyway, just that way I don't lose it. In here. So the bolts are here. What that's doing is that's hitting on the side. In here somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch these bolts, and I'm going to put the bolt on the outside and the nut on the inside, and then that way it might help with putting this cover back on, because I think it's hitting this part of the bolt right there. So I'm going to switch those and see if that works better, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I got the plastic piece back on. Changing these bolts definitely helped. These pins are fairly easy to put back in. I've been putting them in like so, pushing it up. Then you take the centerpiece, pop it in there like so, and then that holds that piece back on. There's a white pin up here in the front that has its own little hole, pops into. Gotta put a couple more in, and then we'll be back together, and then I'll start putting on the rock slider. All right, next thing, I'm gonna start bolting on the back of the rock slider to the frame mounts. These aren't tight yet, because I'm gonna wait till I get this all bolted up, and then I'm going to tighten everything down. So this is a little tricky to do by yourself. So what I've been doing, I got my lock washer, washer, and then nut. So I'm basically going to pick this up, set it on my knee, run one bolt through here, put the washer on the back, like so. Tighten it up just finger tight. Do the same with this other bolt. Alright, so now both sides are on there. Now the fun part. Getting up here. In the hole. Alright, so now we got that one in that hole. Now we have to find my jack stand, which is always way out of reach. Stand underneath there, and now I can start putting bolts in these pieces here, and get the other bolt up there, and the washers and the nut put on that, and then the last part is putting the plastic back on the bottom of the car. It's probably not 100% necessary, but I would rather have some protection for all these lines that are just sitting under here like that. There we go. So, let's get these nuts and bolts on here, and then we'll come back in just a second to show you how it all turned out. Alright, so there it is, all installed. Alright, so I solved the problem of this skid guard not fitting under the car when you put the rock sliders on. So basically all you do is just notch out the back side of the hole and about a ½ inch on each side, and that will allow the brackets to sit like this, and then that bolt hole will just be sitting over the bolt, and then that should fit right back on there just like it did from the factory. Hope you enjoyed the video. Another good investment is Iron Man lift kit. Gives it a lot more clearance and a lot more wheel travel. Till next time, you guys have a great week.